Okay, I appreciate everybody who was able to make the trainings. For those of you who were not able to make one of those three trainings, I'm going to record this short video. If you'll please watch it and just complete the things that are necessary for you to complete. If you have questions, please email or call, text. Any of those mediums is fine. So, first item on the agenda here is the non-UHSAA PACE training. You'll see the link for that. Um, if you could complete that as soon as possible, I would appreciate if it was completed before your fall leadership, but I also understand that some of you may have already had fall leadership or are in the process of fall leadership. So I'll just say complete it as soon as possible, but no later than October 11th. Moving down, item A does talk about the affiliation of your chapter with the state and national organizations. We are going to set a deadline of October 11th for that. Reminder that CTSOs are curricular clubs. Because we're curricular clubs, we do not need to fill out club applications every year unless there has been a change in advisor or a new CTSO started in your school. If you are in one of those two categories, please reach out and I will help you um, get that done. We'll get you pointed in the right direction, connected with the right people. Because we are a curricular club, we are subject to fee waivers. I have included a link to the board approved fees document. Um, if you'll just, honestly, you really don't need to familiarize yourself with that. However, you can if you want. Some of the highlights I just put here. Charging club dues, $50 for high school, $40 for junior high. Activity trips, in-state, not overnight, $200, in-state, overnight, $400, and then nationals is $17.50. Those numbers are set by the school board, not by CTE necessarily. So um, if we find that those are not meeting our needs, then we can definitely review and revise those, but they may not be approved by the school board. So we'll just have to navigate that and figure it out case by case as we come through there. Because we can charge a fee, remember that anytime we're charging a fee, we have to have a spend plan, and that you may not charge a student for anything that is not included on the spend plan. So work with your financial secretary or your assistant principal at your school to do that. I don't have a template because it seems that every school's finance secretary has a little bit of a different preference for how they would like that done. So first line of education there is to go to your finance secretary, and then we can work through it from there. Item number 2, just under meetings, one of the things that I would love to see personally is that we have more communication and collaboration between our junior high and high school CTSOs. We don't have a lot of CTSOs in the middle school level, but the ones we do are very well run. Teachers do an excellent job, and I think it's really important to have that handoff between the two programs as students are transitioning from the junior high to the high school. It just helps build engagement, helps build a collaborative culture, and really continuity for students to stay together and be engaged and involved in that CTSO long term, perhaps through their entire high school career. Travel guidelines, these things have not changed. I've been in CTE for 17 years and in this office for 7, and in that time these guidelines have basically remained the same. Just a couple items I want to draw your attention to is item D, that travel must be through a licensed public carrier. That really does refer more to our national CTSO events where we have students who, upon landing, we need to be able to get students from an airport to a hotel. And that can be done again through a taxi, a bus, um, public transportation, shuttles, those kind of things. Again, licensed public carrier. What we can't do is if we have a family member that lives in the area, we're traveling for nationals, and maybe they have a big van, we just borrow their van and put them in it. We can't do that. Rentals are another option there. I would say a rental car is probably the least favorable option, at least from CTEI's, not only for expense, but also just issues and liability of driving students around in a strange city. Again, not impossible, but I would, definitely look at the route of public transportation, maybe a taxi, a shuttle bus, Uber, those kind of things first. D and E are very much tied together, where if an event is being promoted by the teacher, transportation must be provided. This is just a reminder that if you're having, let's say, a CTSO activity, you're going to go bowling with your chapter. We can't just tell students to meet at the bowling alley at 6 o'clock and do that, or have kids get in their own cars and drive to a CTSO activity. If we're promoting it, we have to provide transportation for it. Along that line, when we talk about transporting students for CTSO, CTE does have a small fleet of vehicles which are available to be used for teachers to transport students to and from school and CTSO activities. The best option to do this is we have a Hyundai Palisade. It seats 7 pretty comfortably, and it lives here at the district office in American Fork. You are welcome to try and schedule that. If you have needs to schedule it, you would do that by emailing Jessica Madsen. She is our secretary here in the office, and she also helps me with all the scheduling and some of the logistics of vehicles. I can't always promise that the Palisade will be available, and I know some of you know that it's actually was taken off the schedule for the last couple of years, and just with the change in leadership in the CTE office, we've decided to open that and make that available again for teachers. The hard thing again with the Palisade is it gets a lot of requests and a lot of use around CTSO activities and throughout the year. So email, and if we can, we'll schedule it for you. If we can't, we'll let you know quickly so that you can make other arrangements. Other teachers know that we also have 4 large trucks that are 4-door trucks. They can seat 5 people, pretty comfortable. The challenge with the truck is that it's a 1-ton, 4-door, long bed truck. They're big, and it's not that I don't necessarily want you using those to transport your students to and from CTSO activities, but really the intention of those trucks was to haul materials, pull trailers, as well as being able to transport students. They're really not ideal for most of our CTSO activities. I got a picture from a teacher a couple weeks ago. He had driven one to a CTSO activity and parked it in a parking garage and sent me a picture, and the truck was hanging, like it was sticking out halfway at least into the the driving lanes through the parking garage. So they're just not ideal. So if you call and ask or email and ask about one of the CTE trucks, if I say no, just understand it's not a personal thing or that I don't trust you with it, but honestly, they are just so big. They're hard to get places, and we really only use those in a pinch if we have to. Okay, item F under travel guidelines. If a parent wants to transport their student, they must email the teacher stating that they are taking responsibility for transporting their student. We can't deny a parent the opportunity to take their kids to and from events, but the protection here is really for you. So make sure that if a parent wants to do that, that they've communicated that to you in a written manner, either through text message, through email. Either of those ways are really good. That's just kind of a covering yourself opportunity where you're just saying, you know what, if this parent gets in an accident or if something happens, I've got this written down that they said, hey, I'm responsible, I'm taking my kid, and we have some record of that. Just moving further through travel guidelines, check with your content specialist for arrangements for buses for fall leadership, state, and nationals. We've been doing that for quite a while. CTSO travel, for out-of-state trips, we have to submit paperwork to the school board 90 days in advance of the trip. So when you have state winners, know that we have to get that information into the school board as quickly as we possibly can. Our state competitions are rarely 90 full days away from when the nationals are. So just communicate with your content specialist as soon as you know who your first place kids are. Moving down, CTE does not support overnight travel for 7th and 8th grade students. Um, this does cause some heartburn and headache for some of our middle level advisors, but just for how CTE is going to operate, we don't take 7th and 8th grade kids on overnight trips. And I think our state has made some great strides to try to accommodate this, where they're having CTSO events, a one-day CTSO event just for 7th and 8th grade kids. So you can kind of see the state trending in that direction as well. Next page, 9th grade students can travel overnight and will be supported financially by CTE for nationals and may be chaperoned by CTSO advisors. Item K is one that I want to draw some attention to. Students who do not travel or stay with the CTSO will not be financially reimbursed or compensated by the district. This one really focuses on our national competitions. I get multiple phone calls every year from parents asking if we can make accommodations for their student travel, meaning that they either want to fly from a different destination or fly in from somewhere else, or they don't want to stay in the hotel, any manner of those things. And it is virtually impossible for me to accommodate everybody's transportation needs. So what I want to be clear about is that when we are covering, and by we I mean Alpine CTE, when we are covering CTSO national trips for students, the intent is that we are covering for a stay in the approved hotel. We're paying for a flight from Salt Lake City to the competition and back to Salt Lake City. We don't fly kids to other airports. And if parents want to make those accommodations, then what I do is I just put it back on the parent and I say, because we can't accommodate everything, I just need you to cover it. There's some heartburn sometimes when we talk about that, but by and large, our parents are understanding that they need to take care of any accommodations. So if that comes across, if you have students asking about that, just tell them that I said no, and then you can give them my office phone number, and yeah, they can call me and talk to me. And last one in this bracket, item L, teachers will only be supported financially for fall leadership and state if they have students in attendance and competing. I get requests all the time for teachers to cover their state costs or their fall leadership costs, and they tell me they didn't take any students. I know that I'm not the be all and end all of all knowledge and understanding in the district, but to me, I've yet to hear a good, reasonable explanation of why we would attend a fall leadership or a state without students. Remember that the S in CTSO is student, so we need to be focused on our kids. All right, nationals. There are some changes here. I'll explain them very quickly. And then if you have questions, please email, call, or text. So for nationals, only 9th through 12th grade students may compete in nationals. The change we have made here is that we are no longer accommodating bump list students. So in the past, going into the Wayback Machine, CTE used to cover students who got bumped from any position into a first place spot. 2 years ago, we changed that and we said, we're going to cover $500 if a student gets bumped from second to first. It just caused a lot of scrutiny, a lot of issues, complications, questions. Honestly, it was a huge headache, not only for me, but for students and parents, administrators, and those above us in the district office, our district leadership team, business services. Just a lot of questions is, well, why do you pay for this kid and not this kid? And how, why not a third place? Why second? It was frustrating for a lot of people. So the change that we made, and when I say we, I don't just mean Ryan, Mikkel, and I. What I'm really talking about is there is a CTSO leadership team that is comprised of teachers from both high school and junior high, and also from every CTSO in the district. So we've got good representation. We discussed it in our meeting with them, and I also discussed it in our coordinators meeting, and the decision was made that CTE from here on will only support students who are first place winners at a state event. So no longer second place bumped to first, third place bumped, no bump list kids. CTE does not cover the cost of bump list students. So if you have a student that gets bumped from second, third, fourth, 10th, 18th place, whatever it may be, to first, just know that that student will not receive any funding from Alpine CTE. Advisors of first place students, I'm looking at item C, will be financially supported by the district if they have students competing in an event. And then really what I just covered was item D. Any students second place and beyond who are bumped to a qualifying position will not be financially supported by the district. Some CTSOs, however, still allow second place students to attend. And so what we've decided, what we've decided, meaning the leadership team, has decided that if a CTSO allows second or third place students to attend the national competition, that those students are still welcome to go with the Alpine group. However, we are not going to provide any kind of financial support for them, and also we have to be able to chaperone. So if you don't have students who qualified as first place winners and yet they want to attend, if it throws off our chaperone ratios, then we have to be creative, and that gets tough, because then it's got to be a parent or a teacher who's attending, and then they have to do it out of their own expense, and that really becomes tough. So I'm not going to try to go through every scenario there and how that would work or wouldn't work, but just be mindful of that. If we had one or two students going and it didn't throw off our 10-to-1 ratio, then maybe it's not a big deal. But if we get 15 or 20 students going that aren't paid for by Alpine CTE, then there's supervision issues that have to be addressed. Final item on that one, ASD CTE will financially support a state officer for one national leadership conference during their term. ASD CTE will not cover an advisor's trip to nationals to chaperone a state officer. If state officers are attending national conventions, the state is providing a chaperone to go with them, and we will only cover one of those trips. Number 5, Sunday travel. If your school has a policy, follow it. But the big one here, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go through, is we just try to accommodate, not discriminate. So if you have a student that needs to go worship on a Saturday or a Friday or a Sunday, whatever day of the week it may be, we really do try our best to accommodate that. Sometimes we just can't because of chaperoning issues or other issues related to commitments with the convention. If for some reason we can't accommodate, the best thing to do is to communicate with parents and with the student. And when I mean communicate, we always default to email, but sometimes a phone call is great as well. If you have a student who's saying, hey, it's Friday, I need to go do my weekly worship, and there's just no way to accommodate that, then a phone call to the parent goes a long way, and we just work through it and we discuss it. Okay? Communication, and accommodate, don't discriminate. It helps a lot of things go smooth. Okay, number 6, food. Meals are reimbursed at the state rate, either in-state or out-of-state. The meal rate is set by the state of Utah. It's not set by Alpine School District or by CTE. It's a state rate that is set and then given to us. There's a lot of requirements that go around reimbursement for per diem, is what this is called. One of those requirements is that in order to be eligible for per diem, you have to submit, or you have to stay overnight. I know I get lots of requests from teachers who will say, gosh, I got on that dang bus at 4:30 in the morning and I didn't get home till 9 p.m. can I have a per diem? And in my eyes, it makes sense, but I'm not important enough to authorize that. So unfortunately, we can't do it, even if it's been a long day. If you haven't stayed overnight, you are not eligible for a per diem, and I will not process that per diem unless you have stayed overnight. So just be aware of that. I wish there was more that I could do there, but it's out of my hands. Another thing that's tough sometimes and is out of my hands is that meals provided with the conference or at the hotel will not be reimbursed. I've had teachers stay at a hotel that said that the hotel provides breakfast, and the breakfast is a boiled egg, a stale muffin, and some sour milk. I'm not making that up. But unfortunately, because the hotel says they provided breakfast, we cannot issue a per diem. So if you don't like what they're serving, unfortunately, there's no wiggle room for me to make a difference there. And then student meals are subject to fee waivers. So if this issue arises, please contact me and let me know, and we'll figure out the best way to provide meals for the student. This has mostly been done for our national conventions where we've had students traveling for a week. I have in the past issued per diem checks for students so that they can have money to eat. So just know that that is a possibility for your fee waiver kids. All right, chaperoning expectations. We talked a little bit about the 10-to-1 earlier. That's the ratio that is set by the school board, not by CTE. So there is no flexibility there. Supervisors must chaperone the same gender. And then if you have a parent or somebody who is not an ASD employee, they must go through fingerprinting and background check, particularly if they are going to be alone with students at any time and any place. All right, and that's a big one for me. So if you have a parent who's going to come to state and help you with kids, and you are going to be judging, and the parent is going to be with kids at lunch or something, they've got to go through that process of the fingerprinting and background check. So the easiest way around this is to, kind of double up on chaperoning with other advisors, another teacher in the department, maybe another teacher in the school, another advisor in the district, counselor, administrator, so on and so forth. Bed checks, item E, should be done by the same gender advisor at curfew. And I would like to add just maybe a best practices thing here. If you're doing bed checks in a hotel at night, I would highly recommend doing that with another advisor or another chaperone. Weirdness happens all the time, and I think it's just best if you have someone else with you when you're knocking on doors of students in the evening and checking on them, making sure everybody's there. It's just good practice to have another person with you. It's not a requirement, but it's one of those things where I would really think twice about doing bed checks on my own if I was an advisor. F, if there are gender accommodation concerns, please contact District CTE. I'll work with your school administration and you as an advisor. We'll figure out those things. Again, we don't discriminate, we accommodate. So we just work around things all the time. If a parent is uncomfortable with a student staying in a room on their own, or if there's gender accommodation issues, we just, like I said, we accommodate and we figure it out, and things typically go smooth. But again, it's that communication component. We have to know if a student brings a concern to you, please pass that on. Don't just kind of shrug it off or blow it off. Like, let's work through this. And then G and H are really tied together. Your students must be chaperoned at all times, and your students are your first priority. We know that sometimes you get to these state events or national events and you're judging or you're hosting an event or doing whatever, and we know you guys do your best to try to just be with your kids all the time. We also know that it's virtually impossible to be with your kids the entire time as well. So again, we go back to the kind of the rotating of the supervision with other advisors, chaperones, so forth and so on. All right, rooming. really, we kind of talk about, um, having students with their same gendered kids. Um, we only pay for students' rooms at the quad rate for nationals, unless there is a larger issue that's brought up. And then typically what I do is I work with parents as well, and I say I'll cover the cost. If a student needs their own room, I'll cover some of the cost. The parent covers the rest. Um, it's a lot easier to work through those issues and challenges rather than getting a lawsuit. So accommodate, don't discriminate. Um, Again, nothing different there. We're just going to keep going. We've kind of hit that pretty hard. Compensation, your CTSO checklist is really here on the stipend form. Um, Remember that you are the one that decides if you're a full-time or a part-time advisor, not me. So when you fill out your stipend form, you check which one you feel most comfortable with, if you've done the full-time work or if you've done part-time work. And then there's also a general addenda form. The addenda is for nationals. So if you attend nationals outside of the school year, you are eligible for up to $500. And if you have your nationals during the school year, we set that limit at $250. Unfortunately, for those who attend nationals during the school year, you're technically under contract, so some of that time is paid just through your normal contract. Those of you who attend nationals in June and July, you get a little more because it's outside of your contract, your contracted contract. There we go. And then finally, hourly or 29-hour employees are not eligible for a CTSO advisor stipend. Okay, last one, the account number request. Remember, when you pay for your registration for fall leadership or state, a hotel room for state, a hotel room for nationals, flights, it's laid out there down below. Please open up that form and fill it out and submit it so that CTE will cover those costs, not your chapter account. We had some issues a few years ago with teachers who booked flights and hotels and registration for nationals, thousands of dollars of expenses, and then they forgot to request for the account number. Those charges then hit the school CTSO account and drained it. And once we roll over into July 1st, I cannot go back and retroactively change that charge. So after we've hit July 1st, if you haven't submitted for your conference expenses for the past year, you're stuck paying for them out of your chapter and out of your school. And there's really not much, if anything, I can do to change that. Okay, that is the CTSO training in a nutshell. I went pretty quick through that. If you have questions, remember, call, email, text. Let me know if you have concern, heartburn, heartache, heartbreak maybe over some of these things. But otherwise, you guys are doing great. We appreciate you, and we look forward to another great year of CTSOs.